we doing? We went out of order a little bit, but that's okay. So we're going to go through a little bit more about implementing supported decision making and tools for people with intellectual disability and people who are nonverbal. So I start with the ASHA Communication Bill of Rights, which basically talks about people's right to affect through communication the conditions of their existence. So I give an example here, but I really want to show you the full example of the Communication Bill of Rights. And basically it goes through the person's right to be heard and to be responded to. I think this is it. So here it starts with all persons, regardless of the extent of their severity of their disability, have a basic human right to affect through communication the conditions of their own existence. So the right to request desired objects, actions, events, and persons, and to express personal preferences of feelings. The right to be offered choices and alternatives. The right to reject or refuse undesired objects, events, or actions, including the right to decline or request all proffered choices. The right to request and to be given attention from and interaction with another person. The right to request feedback about a state, an object, a person, or an event of interest. The right to active treatment and intervention efforts to enable people with severe disabilities to communicate messages in whatever modes as effectively and as efficiently as their specific abilities will allow. And that comes up. You know, I find people with low-tech devices or things that they can't use to communicate with when they need different tools. The right to have communication acts acknowledged and responded even when the intent of these acts cannot be fulfilled by the responder. I find that people are communicating with AAC and the other person doesn't feel like they could fulfill the request, so they don't even acknowledge their existence or the fact that they're speaking. And so I think this speaks volumes. And the right to have access at all times to any needed augmentative and alternative communication devices and other assistive devices, and to have those devices in good working order. And so many times kids and adults don't have access to their device, and then how can we presume competence? We need to presume competence, because if we're not giving them the tools in order to communicate what they know and what they're able to do, it's just really important that we empower them that way. So I wanted to talk about social stories. So I think it's really powerful in supported decision making and a general tool in general for people with intellectual disability who are nonverbal to have social stories in plain language. Actually, if a person's able to read, that doesn't have to have visuals, but visuals are very helpful. And you can also have visual supported decision making agreements. And I have one that I am going to, jumped ahead here. I'm going to pass out to you. I have 3 copies of it, and I want to share it with you. So you can see here, it starts out, my name is Brandon. I am 18 years old. I want team member 1 and team member 2 to help me with school, home, and community, medical, and money decisions. And I'll pass it around, but it's about 17 pages long, and it goes through, you know, what they might want to say, how they might be feeling, and what happens at school. So for somebody with an intellectual disability, they know what services they have. They know they could have a picture of the person who delivers those services and the services that they have at home and in the community. I can send that to you with the slides if you're interested in having that. And so it should be tailored uniquely to the person. But it's just an example for people to take a look at and see how they could talk about consent and what they would be consenting to and what does it mean. And again, I really appreciate the speech therapist that we have in our lives, because she wanted to make sure that there is consent, that they go through this, they learn what it is that we're asking them, and that they consent either yes or no, and that there is a way to show that. Here is an example of person-centered planning that shows the strengths, weaknesses, strengths, what doesn't work, what does work, a vision statement, and what they're working on. And this was particularly good. It has some things in it for the individual. I'm going to find it for you because it's a very young person. Typically, a person-centered plan is for an older person. But typically, they don't have a person-centered plan for a younger person. They have a person-centered plan for somebody who's an adult or who's older. And what I really liked about this person-centered plan is that it was for a young 4 or 5-year-old girl, and that they talked about what their vision is for her future, and that they had a vision, what it is they wanted for her. So I'm going to try and read a couple of things. If I stand back a little bit, I'm old. So what doesn't work? Being rushed, sudden change in activity, negative talk, yelling, and assuming I don't understand. What does work? Belief in my abilities, including me, positive reinforcement, warning me about transitions, praise for my achievements. And then the vision statement says, first it says, teach me to soar, and I will. And then the vision statement says, we envision our daughter living a life of choice. We envision her having relationships she feels are valuable. In her future, we envision her doing work that she enjoys and that make her feel productive. We envision our daughter living a happy and meaningful life surrounded by love and support. And so I just think it's so important to start early and for people to see things like that. Also, there's dream boards, dream-inspired planning. You can look that up, dream-inspired planning, and they have workshops for people with disabilities. And you can do this yourself. You can get your supported decision-making team, get a bunch of magazines, have them cut it up, and talk about what they dream about. And my daughter, of course, wanted wedding magazines and wedding photos, and she's very into the wedding dress. So I think it just really helps nonverbal people express themselves. And one thing I wanted to share about this is, I'm trying to remember which state it was in, but recently a person who was under guardianship went to one of these dream-inspired planning workshops. She made this collage and she showed it to the judge, and it was part of the evidence that actually allowed her to exit the conservatorship or the guardianship in that state. So it actually can be really powerful for people to see what they're thinking and what they want in their life. So this is the circles program that somebody else was asking about. This is just an example. In the middle, there's a purple circle, and that's where the person is, and then they talk about the levels of relationships as you go out in the circle. And they make their own social relationship circle, so they can paste the pictures of different people on there and talk about. There's also examples of the distance and what kind of physical touch you have with those people. So you kiss and hug your family, you shake other people's hands, you give other people's high five, and then it has like policemen and firemen and all those social services on the outside. So remember what it takes. All of this can be programmed into a person's AAC device, and we want to remember that people with intellectual disabilities often need intense and robust interventions, and we want to keep their dreams in mind. Teams, teams, and more teams. If you build supported decision-making into your goals, self-advocacy, problem-solving, decision-making, and self-determination as part of the IEP, the IPP, and the person-centered plan, the employment plan, not only do you have the support of the team, but now you have support of professional teams helping you to implement the goals. And I'll tell you what is missing all the way around, which we've already said, is data on guardianship and data on supported decision making. And so data is what we need when we have, I think more so with people with intellectual disability and nonverbal people. We need video and data. So I said, can you say data? So there hasn't been a legal case challenging supported decision-making agreements to this point, and there's research and pilot programs that we shared with you, but I think that that's really important, showing what decisions people are able to make. And I've shared this story before in terms of video. So my son was using a communication device for about 1.5 years at home and with a private speech therapist, and the person at school insisted that he wasn't capable of using a communication device. And actually, I find that in lots of IEP meetings for lots of different students, that they say, well, that's what they do at home, but they don't do it here at school. And so that is true. We do have to get them to do whatever they're doing at home at school. But video can be very, very powerful. So we were watching the Super Bowl, and he had his Sports Illustrated, so he went in and saw the speech therapist, and he was so excited. He had just seen the Super Bowl, and we videotaped him going, touchdown, touchdown, quarterback running. And so it was really powerful. We showed it in the IEP, and of course he got his communication device at school. So these are just small examples of when people aren't presuming competence, how you can really show what they're able to do, and it's evidence. So it's good. Data and video. So how can I request special education services? Of course, there's the Americans with Disabilities Act, which protects people with disabilities from discrimination. And you want to go to the Parent Center Hub for information about IEPs and IDEA. The other websites may not be complete at this point for IDEA, I'm not sure. But when you apply for special education services, which most of you probably know, you want to do in writing and request a special education assessment. And you should go to your local parent training center if you need help, or your regional center if you have that. How do I apply for DOR, Department of Rehabilitation Services? You can be referred through the IEP process, through your regional center case manager, and you can fill out the application yourself. If you are denied, you can go to your local PTI, to Disability Rights California, or to the CAP advocate that we talked about. How do I apply for regional center services? Basically, if they had a disability before the age of 18, and it's a substantial disability, basically there are 5 different categories that they would have to fall under. And if you want to be assessed, there's a link here to do that that talks about eligibility. And of course, that's the information for Disability Rights California and the Office of Clients' Rights. For those of you who don't know about the Office of Clients' Rights, in my area, it's literally across the hallway or in the same building as the regional center, and they help if you have an issue with the regional center. They have an attorney and an advocate in the office, and they can help you with issues you're having. So if you need more help in setting the wheels in motion, we have the National Resource Center for Supported Decision Making. That's at supporteddecisionmaking.org. Again, your PTIs. There's a Support for Families parent PTI in San Francisco. There's DREDA, Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund in the East Bay, which is amazing, and they have published a lot of great information. Parents Helping Parents in San Jose. The Parent Hub, I gave you that website already. Rights Law and Pete Wright. California regional centers in the Bay Area are GGRC, Golden Gate, East Bay Regional Center, and San Andreas Regional Center. State Council for Developmental Disabilities, they have advocates and representatives that can help, and they generally don't help with direct service. They used to be called area boards, but they can give you advice and point you in the right direction, and they can tell you about advocates. If you need help, they can tell you about the advocates they know. Disability Rights California, and then of course, Disability Rights California has information about everything under the sun online. If you haven't ever gone to their website, they have great advice for many different topics on what you can do.
What site was that?
Disability Rights California.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, lots of information there. And Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates, that's how I got here. I was originally an advocate. I joined COPA, and I went to a conference and learned about supported decision making. So they have conferences every year. They have membership that you can join. You can find advocates and attorneys there, and lots of information. And then the ARC of California, of course, they have 21 or 22 offices, programs in California. So I think we're almost done. And so we just want to remind you that we were not promised ease. The purpose of life is not ease. It is to choose. It is to act upon the choice. In that task, we are not measured by our outcomes. We are measured only by our daring and our effort and our resolve. So I want to thank all of you for being here and for supporting people in your community to have opportunity and to be empowered, to develop independence, and hopefully, I hope that I encourage all of you to think a little differently and to take some action in the people's lives that you support. Thank you very much. And this is somebody asked me about the Setting the Wheels in Motion. This is the website where you can find it. And there's also I co-authored this article. It's a booklet, actually, called What's Next? And I brought it, and I can distribute it around if you're interested. What's Next? A Self-Advocate's Guided Tour Through Transition for Parents and Other Supporters. And it was written by a woman with cerebral palsy, and I helped co-author that guide, but it's very useful. It talks about her perspective, her experience, and her wise advice, because she's a wise woman. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Evaluations, thank you very much. Please, before you leave, do give us your evaluations. We are grant funded and we need that feedback. It's anonymous. Thank you.